apples, Tish James. You're now the subject of a grand jury. And for what, you may ask? Well, Pam Bondi is examining whether or not to indict her for political prosecution. Weird. Specifically in her investigation into, first, the NRA, which forced them out of New York and eventually into bankruptcy. But more importantly, they're looking into her prosecution of Donald Trump in her civil real estate suit. And it's not hard to make the case that Letitia James might have used her political office to go after a political opponent. She said it on the campaign trail.
Will you sue him for us?
Oh, we're going to definitely sue him. We're going to be a real pain in the
I will never be afraid to challenge this illegitimate president.
We need to focus on Donald Trump. We need to follow his money.
What is fueling my soul right now is Trump.
This illegitimate president. I look forward to going into the office of Attorney General every day, suing him, and then going home.
Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. But look, there were so many investigations into Trump. I just want to refresh your memory real quick because it's kind of fun to see how ridiculous it was. Letitia James alleged in a civil case, mind you, not a criminal one, because they would have never proved their case beyond a reasonable doubt in a criminal court. But Donald Trump, they said, had overvalued his properties, alleging a form of mortgage fraud, ironically enough, coming from her, in order to get more favorable loans. Letitia James literally did that. The only problem with this case was the banks, the ones that Trump allegedly defrauded, they said in open court that they were like, yo, we don't feel defrauded at all. In fact, they were extremely happy with their financial transactions with Donald Trump, noting that every mortgage had been paid on time and in full, and they looked forward to doing more business with the Trump organization. Business, actually, they won't get because the Trump org then moved their headquarters out of New York and into Florida and lost a bunch of jobs. Now, right out the gate, this case was completely bogus and compromised, given the fact that Judge Engoron, if you remember, here he is, displayed clear bias, laughing, having a great time, smiling to the cameras as the court gathered on day one. Now, Letitia James, she won that lawsuit, forcing Trump to pay over $450 million in fines, not to mention legal fees, for a crime where the would-be victims that Letitia James is allegedly standing up for said, hey, we're not a victim. And just to point out how ridiculous Letitia James, the judge, and this whole cabal was, part of their conviction, or libel, rested on the valuation of Mar-a-Lago at $18 million. That right there, 18 million bucks, they said. And the internet never disappoints. That patch, look at this, that patch of undeveloped trees right there, that is a fraction of the size of Mar-a-Lago property, just down the street, was selling for $150 million at the exact same time. You want to know what sold for $18 million down the street from Mar-a-Lago? This, right here. I mean, it's still a nice house, but nowhere near the size or elegance of Mar-a-Lago. Their entire case centered around bogus valuations of his properties. Just a quick Zillow search, you just enter that into the record. It would have debunked all of the court's data. But the court rejected this data because all the houses around it were way more valuable than $18 million, and yet a fraction of the size. So I'm sorry, but when I hear the statement that, we got from Tish's office today, by the way, quote, any weaponization of the system should disturb every American. We stand strongly behind our successful litigation against the Trump Organization and the National Rifle Association, and we will continue to stand up for New Yorkers. You've shipped more jobs out of New York than anybody else possibly with your lawsuits. I mean, give me a break, lady. The two questions that can put this whole case to bed, not only for the grand jury, but also for the prosecution, should be, one, where did this prosecution originate? In D.C. or your office? Because I'd be willing to bet, and some of this discovery will show, that much of this probably centered out of D.C. and it was influenced far more than they let on. But also, two, how did you reach the valuations of his properties? Because you didn't ask the actual banks that gave him the loans for it, who did their own evaluations. Actually, you ignored the assessments by the banks. You ignored the assessment of the Trump Organization. You ignored the assessment of a simple Zillow search. So how did you arrive at the assessments of the properties you used to prosecute him? That's all. Honestly, what Trump should be doing right now is only paying taxes on the evaluation that they gave him for those properties. I mean, look, if the tax assessor rejects that, there you go. I'm sure Trump would love to pay taxes on $18 million assessment of Mar-a-Lago. It's like a 20th of what he's paying. I mean, it's overwhelmingly apparent that this was a politically motivated persecution. In an area they knew they would get a jury that would probably hate Donald Trump. A libel verdict in this case was a foregone conclusion. Trump knew it, his lawyers knew it, but most importantly, Letitia James knew whatever charges she brought would be greenlit by a rogue judge who hates the defendant and a very biased jury, just because like 90% of Manhattan votes against Trump. If that's not illegal, at a minimum, it's unethical. I mean, but if that's the case and it lets it go and it's allowed to stand, nobody gets a fair trial in America. So cry me a river, Tish. Look, I honestly, I want you, Tish James, to have the same fairness as Trump had at his trial in Manhattan. Maybe move it to West Virginia or something where not a single district voted for Kamala Harris. I'd be happy with that. But I'm so done taking the high road. Once we feed you back everything you fed us, then we can go back to Robert's Rules of Order. That's fine. But you people went after every single thing you could. Things that a normal person like me, like I would have been buried in legal fees and I would have had to plead guilty because I would have lost my home and everything I own and run out of money. A lot of people actually had that happen to them in this. You caught Trump associates up in this case in like process crimes that weren't even related to your original charges and then sent out fundraising emails about it. I'd venture to say that every aspect of this investigation, of that trial and all the evidence, it's all bogus. And I bet they knew it. That's why, very quietly, by the way, Deep Blue New York legislature tossed in a cool $10 million legal defense slush fund last year in their budget, should Letitia James ever be charged. We didn't forget about that one. They knew this was coming. They knew they were going to get caught. So they took their taxpayer money and they're giving it to Letitia James for her defense. Like, how do we get a judge to overturn that? Maybe that should be part of the criminal prosecution of James as well. Did she lobby for that? I'm sure we can find that in an email somewhere. And if they can't find a reason to separate her from that $10 million state legal slush fund, they better make the investigation cost more than that. I would be thrilled. You know what? I'd be ecstatic, actually, to have my tax dollars, which I pay a lot of, to do to Letitia James exactly what she did to Donald Trump. Oh, Carl, you can't run a republic like that. Don't care. Because if we don't do to them what they did to us, they're just going to keep doing it because they have no consequences. Because when J.D. Vance is smoking whatever Muppet the Democrats put up for their 2028 person, they're going to try to do it again to him. So I want every Democrat attorney general, everyone in the country, every liberal appointed judge, every rogue prosecutor that might have an inkling of this nationwide to take one look at Letitia James in an orange jumpsuit, broken, incarcerated, and say, better not do that. That's how the rule of law works, and I'm here for it.
He loves the Constitution. He fights for what's right. He hates the bad guys. He's a freedom warrior. He's your freedom warrior. Watch Carl Higbie every weekday on Newsmax.